Why can't we do more to empower girls and women is a question I would ask, and I would put on every debate I possibly could. Why is that the case, and what is it we can do, and how can we mobilize? It can't be done just by women, and certainly can't be done by girls, but clearly investing in girls for the next generation, we need a generational change on this, I would also say, as well as a huge commitment. I think that we have gone a long way to achieving equality in many respects, especially in some countries, but not in all. But in no country have we totally achieved real gender equality, not even pay equity. There is no country, despite enabling legislation, very good legislation, policy frameworks, and the will of governments, where we can really say that pay equity has been achieved. And then, of course, if we look at women towards the end of their lives, we see quite often, if they've managed to get out of poverty, likely in old age they're close to back in it again, because lifelong earnings of men and women have still great disparity. Simply counting enrollments is not the best way to go. Even if a child is in school, there's no guarantee that real learning is taking place, that that child can regularly attend, doesn't drop out, doesn't have to combine work, as in child labour, with going to school. So I think we need to look at education more in terms of what can it do to address discrimination. How can it truly include an opportunity for all children, especially marginalized children, those that because of poverty or HIV/AIDS, because of attitudes, need to work either in the home or outside the home, and especially for girls in rural areas, especially for girls at around the age of puberty. There's a real divide there, I suppose, in terms of those that can continue their education benefit greatly as they go into adulthood. They benefit not only themselves and their own family, they also benefit their own community, they benefit the economy as well. And I think there's much research being done, some of which has been done by the World Bank, to show that that kind of investment is real and it does pay off. But in terms of access to education, we have to go further than primary, and we have to stop simply counting enrollment, because we need to instead be looking at how many finish school at least a basic education level, not just primary, and to what extent have they had the benefit of quality education while they've been in school and have been able to learn because they've had good teachers who have had training themselves. They have reasonable conditions to work in, so they can focus on what they're trying to do in the classroom, working with students, meeting their needs. Class size is another issue that impacts, of course, quality of education, as well as pay and remuneration for teachers. In many parts of the world, they can't feed their own families on their teachers' pay. So they need to have a second job, in some cases even a third job. Giving women better economic opportunities shows as a benefit to countries, not just to the family and to the individual woman herself. Where we see a high rate of perpetuated poverty, it's invariably when education has been interrupted or not accessed or not available in the first instance. And girls who are in that situation, either because of traditional values, marry young, or because there's no schooling available, then they are more likely to perpetuate that same cycle of infant mortality, poor nutrition, health, more vulnerability to a whole lot of illnesses, and they're also less likely, of course, to be supported by good public service such as health, and certainly in this case education. Well, violence against women and girls is pandemic. It affects every strata of society, and I don't think any part of the world is particularly free of it. It's complex: domestic violence, workplace violence, societal violence, not necessarily playing out in all of the same way. It has been on the agenda of most of the networks that make up the regions for EI, especially Europe. It's been a topic that they've been addressing one way or the other for the last 3 or 4 years, and it's not anything that has a fast fix. When Ban Ki-moon calls for an end to impunity against violence against women at the UNCSW in 2009, or was that 2008? Yes, 2008. We still don't see huge progress there. I think the UN needs to step up those efforts to have that kind of recognition at the highest and at the most international levels. But once again, education has a particular role there, and so do unions. When it comes to violence in the workplace, yes, unions aren't exempt as workplaces. And we need to take our own conduct seriously and to address harassment. Violence in schools starts with children at a very young age, and that's where we need to address it. So it's a curricular, but not only a curricular thing. I think in so many ways teachers are best placed to monitor and to see. They need to be given the training, they need to be given the support, they need to be given the autonomy to be able to deal with some of these issues in a complex place such as a school. So education has a key role in a number of ways. I set a large store by the networks, and definitely think that one of our roles is to support and encourage both at the regional level and from here at the global level. And because they have a capacity or an opportunity to work in a different way. They don't all have to be the same of each other. Generally speaking, they do need, and in EI's case, they have the support of the regional structure, the political structure of the region, which gives them some better basis to do what they do. And also we provide some funding, not enough, but some. We also have generous support from some of EI's own members, what I like to call our DC partner group, and particularly the networks do receive support from those EI members, because we see them as a valuable vehicle, more than a vehicle, a means of identifying the issues, making change and addressing some of those issues, and bringing the issues up from the ground, as opposed to having things centrally decided, or centrally, whether that's at the regional level or at the national level, and down. I think that they are an important means of addressing complicated issues, providing for women in particular, but not only, to exchange information and ideas, to have some of the debate, to be able to do even some analysis of issues, and to bring those forward to the larger gatherings. One of the main purposes of the EI's first World Women's Conference was to be an opportunity for the networks to connect and to create out of that a greater sense of a global, whether it becomes an actual network or not, but a greater sense of what the global core agenda should be. The first EI World Women's Conference, Equality on the Move, is about exactly that. Action-oriented to achieving equality. More specifically gender equality, but not limited to, because usually there's connections here that can't be overruled. And of course, one of the major aims for Education International is to end discrimination. So this is an important point along the way. It's a way of doing some work, revitalizing the agenda, and coming together to see what new directions we can set ourselves for the next period of time. And the timing is important in terms of being the year before the Congress. It isn't a decision-making body, of course. It is a conference. It will be a work session. It's not merely an event. And the themes, I think, are important, and they were endorsed by the Status of Women Committee of EI in 2006, and they haven't changed. So within the context of the current global crises of finance, food, security, and climate change, which are cross-cutting in terms of achieving gender equality, and with two-thirds of the way towards the deadline for the achievement of the Millennium Development Goals in education and gender equality, it's time for us to take stock of where we're at. Now, in terms of status of women, we know that we've made some considerable gains over the last decades. We can see that, especially in some countries, less so in other countries. But there's new challenges, there's emerging challenges. And we also appear too often to pay lip service to the term gender equality. It's easy to say, it's a little harder to do. And I think that I'm not the only one who would say at this point that if we really are to achieve gender equality by 2015, we will need a huge scaling up of the efforts, the attitudes, the efforts, not only the money, but more than that, making a space, economic empowerment for women, strong political commitment, and access to education for women and for girls. In terms of financing gender equality, there are many aspects that we need to look at. And the unpaid work is certainly one of them. Conditions of work are another. Where women are in the lowest paying jobs or unpaid work, they cannot participate in economic development and in society in the same way as women who are. And we do see consistently huge dividends for women who have some education, who can engage in paid work, and who can therefore make a contribution themselves to the benefit of the country that they are contributing to. When we look at labour markets, we still see considerable inequities. When we look at actual jobs, we still see, and this is a generalization, sorry, I'd have to get much more, we still see that, and if you say education, for example, we still see women in part-time positions more than men, and that's partly, mainly probably, for family reasons. So we still need a much greater recognition of the work-family life balance. That's become a topic for the in Europe. The European Parliament has taken it on. It also was a theme at the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women in 2008. And it's one that unions are becoming more and more aware of and engaged in debate around. Until we have that kind of family responsibility sharing, there will still be a downside for women in the workplace and in education. In general, they have less access or ability to access one or the other promotions where they do exist. And even, I would say, additional training, professional development opportunities, too often there's an imbalance there as well. Some of those things are changing, have changed, and it would become somewhat country-specific. But also, we see regression, unfortunately. And sometimes that's to do with national cutbacks. And an example that I noticed very much in March this year, was Canada, where it's starting to show in terms of gender pay gaps, rapid increase from about 11% in 2006 to more like 30% now. Gender equality is a very important Millennium Development Goal. We all know and we agree with that. But women can't do it without the support and help of our brothers, the men, whether it's in our unions, whether it's in our schools, whether it's as our national leaders. We need men to be aware, to be vocal, to be with us. And we see that they are. Increasingly, that is the case. We ask them to make a space. We ask them to support women on their way into leadership positions. Sometimes that's difficult to do. In the huge global fight to end impunity against violence against women, men are a critical player. We cannot do that without the active support of men. And in terms of sharing in families, the same thing would apply. And in making the union the ideal place in terms of achieving gender equality, once again, we need all union members to be on that to achieve that commitment, men and women, and looking to the next generation of new active young leaders as well in our efforts to mentor. So much does begin in the classroom. And as a teacher, as a member of Education International, I have to say again that we need quality education for all of our children, all of the world's children, with qualified teachers who have the opportunity to show what caring, committed professionals they are because they're supported to do their job. That means they need decent work in terms of pay and working conditions in order to focus on the needs, complex needs these days. Classrooms, schools are very complex places. And we need the best people in those classrooms to work with children from the youngest age through to higher education, all sorts of vocational education and training and college, boys and girls, so that they can truly learn to live and work and do together, not only in the classroom, but outside the classroom and, in fact, through their lives. So gender equality starts right there in those classrooms with good teachers, men and women. And I think that there are some specific issues we need to address around that in terms of role models. In some parts of the world, we need many more female teachers so that we can attract and keep more girls in school. In other parts of the world, we have an imbalance with more women in the profession than men. I think it's important that we are able to encourage women and men into all levels of teaching so that they can be where they can do the best job, whether that's men in primary or whether it's women at higher education. We certainly see fewer women at higher education and very few men working with young children, and to some extent that's still an attitudinal issue of our own societies. Curriculum, opportunities for boys and girls, as well as definitely non-stereotyping and non-discrimination in all curricular material and activities that are carried on in schools, in the classroom, but also around the school and in the extracurricular and co-curricular avenues as well. It all adds up. It's all important. Teachers in that sense are important role models, but they need to be supported in their job to do that well. Upgrading, training, continuous, lifelong professional development are important in that regard as well. So I think that to really have a new generation where gender equality is a fact of life, we do need to focus very much on education access and on schools, and unions can raise their voices. The union voice is a strong voice, and one of its best uses is to advocate for quality public education for all children and good conditions for all teachers.